Why simplifying your life changes everything. Modern life is filled with excess. Too much information, too many choices, too many obligations, too many distractions. At first, this seems like freedom. More options should create a better life. More opportunities should create happiness. But for many people, the opposite happens. They feel overwhelmed, mentally scattered, constantly busy but strangely unfulfilled. Because complexity has a cost, every unnecessary decision consumes attention. Every distraction fragments focus. Every commitment divides energy. Over time, life becomes crowded, not only externally, but internally. Welcome to 10-Minute Books, the channel where we break down the world's most powerful books into practical lessons you can apply in everyday life. Today, we explore a powerful idea reflected across three influential books: Essentialism by McKeown, The One Thing by Keller, and Make Time by Knapp and Zeratsky. Why simplifying your life changes everything. McKeown begins Essentialism with a simple but radical idea. Not everything is equally important, yet many people live as if everything deserves equal attention. Every request feels urgent. Every opportunity feels necessary. Every notification demands response. This creates a life driven by reaction instead of intention. McKeown argues that the essentialist asks a different question: what truly matters? And just as importantly, what does not? Simplification begins with elimination, not adding more systems, not optimizing every minute, but removing what is unnecessary, because the more scattered your attention becomes, the less deeply you can engage with anything meaningful. Keller develops a similar idea in The One Thing. He argues that extraordinary results come from extraordinary focus, not from balancing dozens of priorities simultaneously, but from identifying the single most important thing and giving it concentrated attention. Keller explains that multitasking is largely an illusion. People are not truly doing multiple things at once. They are switching attention rapidly, and every switch carries a cognitive cost. This creates mental fragmentation. Energy becomes diluted. Simplification restores concentration. When fewer things compete for attention, depth becomes possible. Knapp and Zeratsky approach the problem from modern daily life. In Make Time, they argue that many people live by default settings. Technology companies compete aggressively for attention. Endless feeds, notifications, constant stimulation. Without intentional boundaries, people become reactive consumers of information instead of active creators of their lives. Knapp and Zeratsky emphasize intentional design, choosing deliberately how attention is spent. Together, these books reveal a powerful truth. Simplification is not about having less for the sake of less. It is about removing what distracts from what matters most. The first principle is clarity. Complexity creates confusion. When attention is spread across too many priorities, direction disappears. Simplification forces clarity. What matters most? What deserves energy? What creates real value? This question becomes easier when unnecessary commitments are removed. The second principle is focus. Attention is limited. Every commitment consumes cognitive energy. Too many priorities create shallow engagement with all of them. Keller argues that focus compounds. The ability to concentrate deeply on one important area creates disproportionate results. But focus requires sacrifice. You cannot prioritize everything simultaneously. The third principle is decision fatigue. Modern life demands constant decisions. What to answer, what to watch, what to buy, what to prioritize. Each decision consumes mental energy. Simplification reduces this burden. Fewer unnecessary choices create more mental clarity. This is why routines can be powerful. They preserve cognitive energy for meaningful decisions. The fourth principle is intentionality. Complex lives often become reactive. People respond continuously to external demands, messages, requests, algorithms. Simplification restores intentionality. You choose deliberately what enters your attention, instead of allowing everything access to your mind. This changes the quality of daily life. The fifth principle is elimination. McKeown repeatedly emphasizes that saying no is essential. Without elimination, life becomes crowded by low-value obligations. Many people fear missing opportunities, so they say yes constantly. But every yes creates a hidden no. Time spent here cannot be spent elsewhere. Simplification requires courage. The courage to disappoint expectations. The courage to ignore distractions. The courage to choose selectively. The sixth principle is depth. Shallow engagement creates shallow satisfaction. Constant scrolling, constant checking, constant multitasking. These create stimulation, but not fulfillment. Depth requires uninterrupted attention, long conversations, focused work, meaningful reflection. Simplification creates the space necessary for depth. The seventh principle is energy management. Not all exhaustion comes from hard work. Much of it comes from fragmentation. Switching constantly between tasks drains mental energy. Unfinished obligations create psychological tension. Simplification reduces this friction. Energy becomes more concentrated, and concentrated energy produces momentum. The eighth principle is ownership. Many people unconsciously inherit complex lifestyles, social expectations, consumer culture, digital habits. Simplification requires questioning these defaults. Do you actually value these commitments, or have they accumulated automatically? Knapp and Zeratsky emphasize designing your days intentionally. Otherwise, external systems design them for you. The ninth principle is stillness. Modern life rarely allows mental silence. Every empty moment is filled. Music, phones, notifications. But stillness is essential for reflection. Creativity often emerges from quiet attention. Without stillness, people lose connection with their own thinking. Simplification restores mental space, and mental space restores clarity. The 10th principle is meaning. There is also a deeper existential layer. Many people fill life with activity because stillness feels uncomfortable. Busyness becomes distraction. Complexity becomes avoidance. But simplification forces confrontation. What actually matters? What creates fulfillment? What deserves your limited time? This can feel uncomfortable initially, but it also creates alignment. Life begins reflecting values more clearly. Another important insight is that simplification increases appreciation. When everything competes for attention, experiences become diluted. Meals become rushed. Conversations become partial. Moments become unnoticed. Simplification slows perception. You notice more deeply. You engage more fully. And ordinary experiences regain richness. There is also the role of identity. Many people attach identity to busyness. Being overwhelmed feels important, productive, necessary, but complexity often hides lack of direction. Simplification requires confidence. Confidence to choose less. Confidence to focus narrowly. Confidence to ignore unnecessary noise. This creates a different relationship with time. Less frantic, more deliberate. Over time, the effects compound. Less distraction, more focus, less mental clutter, more presence, less reactive living, more intentional living. And perhaps this is the most important shift of all. Simplification creates space, and space changes everything. Space to think, space to focus, space to reflect. space to notice what truly matters. Because when life becomes less crowded, meaning becomes easier to see. The question then becomes, what complexity in your life is unnecessary? What commitments? What distractions? What habits? Because often, the life you want is hidden beneath the noise you refuse to remove. That was why simplifying your life changes everything explored through Essentialism, the one thing, and make time. Which idea resonated most with you? Focus, elimination, or intentionality? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe to 10-Minute Books, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into powerful ideas. Because simplifying your life is not about having less. It is about making room for what matters most.